Seeing that it's 11 o'clock, we'll kick off the webinar. I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar. My name is Jason Banducci. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Development for Integra Resources. We'd like to welcome you to the webcast hosted by Integra Resources to discuss the transaction announced today between Integra and Florida Canyon Gold. From the Integra side, I'm joined by Jason Kosick, President and CEO, George Salamis, Executive Chairman, and Andre Saint-Germain, Chief Financial Officer. The webinar today will feature a presentation by our CEO, Jason Kosick, followed by a Q&A session. We will save all the questions until the end of the formal presentation. During the presentation, we ask you to register your questions in the queue through the Q&A feature. With that, I'll hand it over to Jason to kick off the presentation.
Thanks a lot, JB, and thank you everyone for joining today's webcast. First and foremost, I'd like to thank both teams, both the Integra team and Florida Canyon Gold, for working really hard to push this transaction across the line here. Just a cautionary statement, I will be making forward-looking statements, and the full disclaimer is on the company's website, and I encourage you all to take a look at it. First and foremost, what I want to say is that this transaction aligns with the company's long-term vision since the inception of becoming the leading growth story in the precious metal space in the Great Basin. And what we believe in is rapid project advancement and disciplined risk-taking to maximize shareholder value. Throughout the inception of Integra, we've looked at a number of projects. We're quite disciplined. We do not move on anything that we do not have conviction on. And after doing an extensive due diligence process, we were very comfortable with the Florida Canyon asset, and more importantly, the Florida Canyon management team. What we've done here is something very transformational. We have now created a mining hub with 20 plus years of mining, over 10 million ounces in the resource base, and one of the leading growth stories with 70,000 going to north of 250,000 ounces within the next 5 years. The Nevada North project, when you're standing on the pit, top of the mountain, you can see the Florida Canyon pit. From Florida Canyon to our flagship Delamar, it is a 3-hour drive. So we have created this mining hub, a lot like great other companies have, like Agnico Eagle and Alamos, that we can really optimize the synergies within our portfolio. Not only that, the transaction comes with a very experienced workforce specializing in open pit heap leach, so we can maximize the synergies between the three assets. Immediate to this transaction, Integra shareholders will have access to roughly about 70,000 ounces of production over the next 7 years, and immediate exposure to a strong metal price. There's significant benefits to the local workforce. With this also, we have an enhanced capital markets profile, trading liquidity, a reduction in our costs of capital, which is crucial when we come to project financing for Delamar. More importantly, there's potential for future index inclusion and some new significant cornerstone investors. The benefits to the Florida Canyon shareholders, between Delamar and Nevada, we deliver over $1 billion of development NAV through our high-quality projects, significant trading liquidity with our New York listing, and a lot of operational synergies and an extended mine life for the pro forma company. From the team, our Executive Chairman, George Salamis, who's been introduced by Jason Banducci, Andre Saint-Germain, and myself. From our executive team, one addition is Greg Robinson. He is the General Manager at Florida Canyon. He has over 25 years of experience working on open pit heap leaches within the Great Basin. He has frankly led the turnaround story and got us really comfortable with the asset. Scott Olson, 17 years, open pit heap leach, metallurgist by trade with Kinross and Barrick, running Bald Mountain. Raphael Dutot, who is a PhD in resource optimization. He was running Essakane and Roosevelt for IM Gold. Jason Banducci is on the call, 8 years of investment banking experience, and Mark Stockton, who's our VP of External Affairs and Sustainability. On a pro forma snapshot here, we'll have 167 million shares out, market cap of 165 million. This transaction has been supported by Beatty, by Wheaton Precious Metals, and Alamos. Part of the transaction, Beatty did their third-party due diligence. They were very supportive. They will be supportive in the financing. Wheaton Precious Metals also did their due diligence, are very supportive. We'd also like to welcome a new cornerstone investor, GMT Capital, who will be one of our largest institutional shareholders. So on a pro forma basis, Integra shareholders will be 60 and Florida Canyon shareholders 40, in which benefits the Florida Canyon shareholders as we see a significant re-rating potential with our paper in the coming years. What we see here is Florida Canyon really is the matchstick that unlocks the $1 billion of development NAV. And what I said earlier is creating this mining hub with 10 million ounces in 20 plus years of production, okay? The rest of the portfolio, the exploration portfolio, is something that you get completely for free. What it looks like on a production scenario, I think is really important. Over the next 5 years, it is the leading growth story in the Great Basin, in being the #1 mining jurisdiction in the world, going from 70,000 ounces to just shy of 300,000 ounces in the next 5 years. And frankly, it's a waterfall effect of cash flow and human talent. When you look at the production history, it's been continuous production from 1986 and up until 2015. I think the most important thing here is this is an open pit heap leach project. The team has done an amazing job turning around this project and really has had consistent production. Greg got involved in 23, where he hit record production and met all of his guidance, $13.68 cash costs, $16.64 all AISC costs, respectively. And this year, we're planning to meet our target of 73,000 ounces. The big thing this year is there was a substantial capital injection this year by the team, which is on time and on budget of $43 million. That was the third pad expansion and the building their CIC. Upon closing the transaction, the major capital items will be behind us. This is now, we're looking at the feasibility dated July 11th. This is a 7-year mine life with 3 years of residual leaching. Our management team strongly believes, as we specialize in low sulfidation epithermals, that we can significantly extend the mine life. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit still to be had south of the Florida Canyon mine and in and around the Standard Mine. The life of mine AISC, 1525, steady state production of 70,000 ounces a year over the 7 years. NPV 128 for the base case scenario, which is basically consensus. So 2,200 in 24, 2,150 in 25 and 26, and then flatlined at 1,900 thereafter, with a 1.5 year payback, which is commonly you never see in precious metal M&A. From a production scenario, as I mentioned, very steady state production, averaging about 70,000 ounces. The costs coming down in 27, as the strip comes down to 0.6 in those years, and in the earlier years, 1.2, 1.2, and then zero point 0.6 the rest of the mine life. And ASICs, in line with what we expect in the feasibility, and I encourage you to take a look at that. As I mentioned, Greg joined the team in 23. He is a mining engineer, MBA, 25 plus years experience. Right now, we're looking at just over 900,000 ounces in the M&I category, giving us that 7 years of mine life, and then another 2.2 million ounces in the inferred category. Part of what we're doing the financing for is to complete some of the optimization studies that we'll most likely be implementing in the coming years. Greg and the Florida Canyon Gold team has done a great job of recognizing where we can optimize the project, especially from a processing perspective. What we see from a geological perspective, you see here that the Florida Canyon Mine proper, these are fragmented soil grids based on a fragmented land package. We strongly believe that south of the Florida Canyon Mine is underexplored. There hasn't been any modern day drilling in the last, call it 20 years. And in the host rock, which is the Natchez Pass in the Grass Valley, this brown rock and this green rock, there's only been about 5 holes in the last 20 years. There is some low-hanging fruit around the Standard Mine that is fully permitted and ready to go right now with an existing mine plan of operations. It's also then surrounded by an exploration plan of operations, which allows us to go attack this low-hanging fruit that we strongly believe there's potential to increase the resource by about 300,000 ounces in the coming years. As I move to our flagship project, Delamar, which I think most people on the call are quite familiar with, I think it's important to know that 90% of the current resource is in the M&I category. Right now, we're sitting at 3 million ounces of gold, 142 million ounces of silver. The current state of permitting, the mine plan of operation, was submitted in December of last year. It has been signed and deemed complete by the local BLM. We expect the NOI to be signed in the fall, which will start the NEPA process. And under the new regulations put in July 1st, we would expect to have a record of decision in 2026 in November. More importantly, we're still on track for our feasibility that will come out in Q4 that will be incorporating the stockpiles that we drilled in 2022. What we're looking at here is the heap leach component of the PFS that was published in 21. What we're seeing here is an NPV5 of 470 million and a 47% IRR using $2,000 gold and $2,300 silver. Represents 1 million ounces payable. And what you see here is the current resource of 81 million tons. As I mentioned earlier, what the team has done is we drilled off all the stockpiles that Kinross had left behind. Okay, so if Kinross didn't meet their cutoff of 0.85, we were able to drill off 42 million tons in the indicated category that will be added to the 81 million tons in the updated feasibility study. What that does for our team is it extends our mine life. It gives us a lot of operational flexibility when you have 42 million tons sitting at surface. And frankly, these are high margin ounces as they are, you don't have to drill and blast them. They are sitting at surface. More importantly, they were a cost in the PFS, and now they will be going on to the leach pad. So the team is working diligently on doing our strategic mine planning and optimizing it for the feasibility. What you see here, there are some higher grade zones associated with Tip Top and Jacobs Gulch. The grades are very similar to the in situ material. But as I mentioned, 42 million tons, looking at around 500,000 ounces with basically similar grades to the in situ material, and that will be incorporated into the feasibility in Q4. As I move south to the border, our Nevada North project, as I mentioned, it's about 40 miles from the Florida Canyon project. So there's no doubt there's a lot of operational synergies, especially as Florida Canyon comes off in the next 7 to 10 years. A lot of that equipment can be moved over to the Nevada North project. Right now, we're sitting at 1.3 million ounces in the M&I category, 270 in the inferred. It's important to note that this is not your typical feasibility study, where this is 80% of the material is in the indicated category. Okay. The conversion rate from inferred to indicated is around 87 to 90%, representing some of the best conversion rates I've seen to date. What we are able to do, it's important to note that this project has only been drilled on a notice. So what that means is you only get 5 acres of total disturbance. Okay. We have now have a lot more disturbance going from 5 acres to 400 acres. So we are able to deliver 1 million ounces payable, 490 million NPV, 54% IRR at $2,000 gold and $23 silver. Okay. We envision over the next 12 to 24 months that we will significantly increase the resource and relating to positive impacts to the next economic study. What we believe, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit here with respects to the exploration. What I'm highlighting in white is all the surface samples and historical drill holes. You can see the samples in red and yellow that are well above the cutoff. So we can significantly grow the oxide resource base over the coming years, as all that sits in there right now is everything I'm shading in white. We also right now have a very exciting drill program, as I mentioned, to expand the oxides to the east and to the north, and also have a potential new discovery that sits below these post-mineral basalts, looking for these high-grade feeders that no one has frankly ever drilled in the past. When you look at it on a pro forma basis, there's a significant re-rating opportunity, as now we're sitting, as I mentioned, at 10.2 million ounces. When you look at our production scenario, we'll significantly gap over our peer group with everything online in the next 5 years, hitting around 286,000 ounces. I think it's important to note that, we're buying production here. It's an amazing entry point. You're getting development level paper, and there's a significant re-rating opportunity to trade in line with our peer group. And frankly, one of the things that the Florida Canyon management team liked most about our offer is the re-rating potential of our stock. Okay. I think that's very important to note here. Also, when you look at other projects that have gone through this, where you have projects that were not a core asset to the company, like Florida Canyon has, and like a lot of these projects, whether it be Core Wharf, Caliber, and the B2 Nicaragua assets, whether it be New Market or Fosterville, when we allocate, intellectual allocation and financial allocation, we believe that there's significant value to still be extracted from the Florida Canyon project. In summary, what we really believe is that, you have steady state of 70,000 ounces for the next 7 years, a leading growth story in the Great Basin, focusing on Nevada and Idaho. You're sitting over 10 million ounces, 20 plus years of mining. We inherit a really specialized workforce with the Florida Canyon team, who's done an amazing job over the last 2 years. really turning over Florida Canyon, um, and significant kind of financial strength with the likes of BD, Wheaton Precious Metals, and GMT Capital, with a number of other institutional shareholders. Um, the transaction metrics, on a pro forma ownership, 60/40 in favor of Integra, share exchange ratio of 0.46, approximate consideration upon closing of 95 million on July 26th. It's subject to review by the TSX and the NYSE. Integra does not need a shareholder vote. Part of the transaction is Florida Canyon Gold will be allotted 2 board members. In conjunction with this, we have launched a $20 million bought deal private placement, and there's a termination fee of $2.25 million. With that, I will open the floor for questions.
And just a reminder, if anyone has a question, the best way would just be to register it under the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So there's 100 people on the call, and we're starting to see questions trickle in. So I'll kick it off with the first question being, how does this transaction impact the timing and progression of DeLamar, Nevada North?
So it doesn't change the timelines at all for Nevada North or DeLamar. DeLamar is still the flagship project. It's still going to produce double what Florida Canyon will produce once up and running. So we still envision that the permits will be coming in 26, and in Nevada North in 2028, 2029.
Throughout the due diligence process, what really stood out about the asset? What attracted the Integra team to the project?
Yeah, I think one of the things is the consistency of the recovery, the consistency of the grade, and more importantly, how well the team has been operating this mine on a limit with limited capital. I think that was very impressive. That Greg and his team have done a great job operating this with kind of the cash that they've had allowed to them. More importantly, we do see a lot of exploration potential south of the mine and to north of the mine that we can extend the mine life, by a few years. That'll, add significant amount of value.
Perfect. Next question is, at current spot prices, how much cash flow do you expect to collect from Florida Canyon, and how much do you see going to DeLamar?
Yeah, so, I'll be careful with guidance right now. Okay, at current metal prices in 25 and 6, you're looking at 25 million. In 27, you're looking at around 48 million, and averaging about 50 million a year past that. But I think we'll give out proper guidance once we close the transaction. But I think the team has done an exceptional job meeting what they've been providing to the market.
So you spoke about synergies a couple times throughout the presentation. Can you speak to some of those synergies and how the benefits would be reflected in both Nevada North and DeLamar?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that when you have a staff that is specialized in open pit heap leach, when you go to build DeLamar, those expertise can be shared to, enhance the surety that we will build DeLamar on time and on budget. More importantly, a lot of the equipment can be brought over to Nevada North, and a lot of synergies with the local service providers as well. Not only that, it enhances our community profile and our social license to operate.
As Integra transitions from development to producer, is there a plan to add any new members of the team to help round out the skill set?
From the team right now, we're fully confident in our team. Greg is, like I said, 25 plus years mining engineer. Um, you know, he's the linchpin here at the organization. He's mining engineer, MBA. Scott Olson, like I said, 17 plus years operating Bald Mountain metallurgist by trade. So we're quite confident in our team to execute the plan that we've put forth here.
And I would also just note, like from a board perspective, even the existing members on the Integra side, we benefit from the likes of people like Eric Tremblay, who was a GM at Canadian Malartic. And so in addition to the expertise we're going to gain from the nominees from Florida Canyon, I think when we take a step back and look at our management team and board, while we are a development company, there is extensive experience across the board at the production level. Another question from the audience is, can you speak to some of the feedback from key shareholders over the last few hours?
Yeah, it's been very, very well received from all of our major shareholders and some new major shareholders. The big thing is that, as a development company, constantly going out to the market and raising, 10 to $15 million a year is dilutive, and the market frankly knows that. So given the current cash flows that we see that Florida Canyon, and we anticipate that it'll cover all of the costs at Nevada North and Delamar and at the corporate level. So we don't envision going back to the market until we go for project financing for Delamar. And I think that's the big thing that, a lot of these development companies, they're just on a dilution treadmill, and it's really important to separate us from that.
Perfect. Another question here. How much cash does Florida Canyon have? How much debt? And will Integra benefit from the sale of the Mexican projects?
Yeah, so, right now, Florida Canyon, when we close the transaction, will about have $15 million into it. That's including the sale, the Mexican asset sale. With the financing and our cash balance, we should finish the year around 22 million US dollars in the treasury. I should note that like I said, some of the cash in Florida Canyon will be going, 11 million of that will be going in for the surety cash collateral bond of $11 million. And there is no debt at Florida Canyon.
Another question on permitting and whether we see any synergies from having a producing asset right next door to Nevada North, and a 3 hour drive away from Delamar. I guess how do you see the benefits to the permitting journey that we'll have to be on for the next few years?
Yeah, especially with Nevada North here, as Florida Canyon will be dwindling down, it's important to keep that workforce in Winnemucca and in Lovelock. So, as Nevada North is moving along the permitting timeline, it'd be in the county and the BLM's best interest to support us to get that permitted before Nevada North comes online and before Florida Canyon finishes. More importantly, with respects to Delamar, as the BLM at the state level and the Department of the Interior at the federal level see us successfully operating an open pit heap leach just south of our flagship project, I think it'll give them a lot more comfort and stability that we can operate these mines in a cost-effective manner.
We just had two more questions come on. I think I'll just actually take the first one, which was asking about ASIC target for Florida Canyon in 2024 and 2025. I mean, I think it would be prudent to say we don't have a target yet, but I would refer you to the recently published technical study as we continue to close the transaction and look to do more work to understand the project and the operating capacity and costs. We'll look to release our own guidance, but I think the best thing we could tell you is look at the technical report. It was just studied, as part of our due diligence. As a management team and with our third-party consultants, we were able to verify and quantify all the numbers in the report, and we were comfortable with them. And they're all recent, reflect the current cost of operating the Florida Canyon mine. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, Jay.
No, I think that's exactly right. Is that we will be putting out our guidance. So as we go through the integration process, in the meantime, I think referring you all to the feasibility study that was published July 11th of this year would be our best guidance for now.
And then a question about growing the production profile at Florida Canyon over the next 12 months. And I think, again, I'll just jump in. This transaction's intended to close in October, late October. And so, I think we're not going to promise to growing the production before we own it. But I think, as Jason mentioned, a lot of the work and a lot of the value we see in the project is the steady state of production and operations that have been demonstrated over the last several years. So I think that's the starting point. I think until we get in and really do our work to better understand what's possible and what's doable there, it would be hard to comment on growing or changing the production profile at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
If there's any other questions, I don't see any more, and so I'll leave it for a second. But not seeing any more, I think we can look to hand it back to you, Jason, for any closing remarks to end off the webinar.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for joining, and I think it's an exciting time for Integra shareholders and Florida Canyon Gold shareholders as we go through this transformational transaction, which over the next 5 years will see production triple, costs come down, and in this gold price environment, we're quite excited of where we sit today. So I appreciate it all, and thank you very much for your time.
And I would just jump in. I think like what we pride ourselves on being accessible, and if there's any questions, you can book a meeting directly with Jason through our website. And we're in the business of operating with transparency and being communicative. And so we encourage you to reach out with your questions, and the lines of communication don't stop with the webinar ending. We're happy to answer any questions at any time. Well, with that, thank you again for everyone. Happy to see over 100 people here. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.